Welcome to Understanding ASD and ADHD, our post-diagnosis group, which has been developed by the neurodevelopmental team in Coventry and Warwickshire. This is a 4-session programme to provide relevant information to help support you and your child with a diagnosis of ASD and/or ADHD. The aim of the programme is to understand common difficulties for children with ASD and/or ADHD and to help you develop strategies to support your child. The programme sessions include this session, which is Understanding Neurodevelopmental Conditions. If your child is Key Stage 2 or over, you may find it useful to look at the second half of this session together. Session 2 is called Understanding Emotions. We recommend that this is parent only. Session 3 is called Understanding Risk and Vulnerability. Again, we recommend this is for parents only. And finally, Session 4, which is creating your own toolkit, which will be useful to do together with your child. Before we jump straight in, we would like to encourage both parents and children to start this session with some heavy work and calming activities. Heavy work activities help to calm and focus you in order to help with loud environments or if you become anxious or distressed. You may benefit from doing some physical activity before sitting for long periods of time, such as during assembly or when you're doing tasks which you don't like very much, maybe like handwriting. The following activities help to give opportunities for movement and provide proprioceptive stimulation which might help you to feel calm. You might find some of these techniques useful for moments in your day when you need to recenter yourself, and they're easy to do wherever you are without the need for equipment and without drawing attention to yourself. So let's practice together. Copy the first picture on the upper left by pressing the palms of your hands together strongly, creating some resistance. You should feel this through your forearms as you push and release. You might find this helps you feel calmer in your body. In the second picture, you hook your fingers together and pull each hand away. Again, you should feel this in your forearms as you pull and release. In the third picture, on the top right, wrap both arms around your body as if you were giving yourself a massive hug and gently squeeze. You'll need to be sitting on a chair for the bottom left picture. With your feet resting on the floor, grip both hands either side of your chair and straighten your arms, lifting yourself off the chair and then lower back down gently. The lower middle picture is a standing press-up position. To do this, place your hands on the wall with arms bent and push your weight back by straightening your arms, like a standing press-up. If you're at school or out and about, this can be done in lots of different ways so that people don't notice. For example, if you're feeling a bit overwhelmed while you're waiting in the dinner queue in the school canteen, you could rest your shoulder against the wall and lean in. Last but not least, in the bottom right picture, interlock your fingers and place your hands on top of your head and gently apply pressure by pressing down. This is a really good one to do sitting at your desk at school or office, or when you're taking a moment to gather your thoughts. You might find that you've been doing this automatically without even realising. In this session, we will be looking at what ASD and ADHD is. If you have children in Key Stage 2, 3 or 4, you may find it useful to go through this session together, and we'll suggest some activities that you might want to do to help you talk together about the way ASD and/or ADHD looks like in your family. Whilst we recognise there are a number of neurodevelopmental disorders, during this session We'll be focusing firstly on autism spectrum disorder, also known as ASD, and then attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, also known as ADHD. A neurodevelopmental disorder refers to a disorder that can impact a child's functioning in a number of areas, such as social communication, emotional expression and understanding, impulse control, memory, and learning. A child or adult with a neurodevelopmental disorder has a brain that's wired differently from what's termed as a neurotypical person, which means the way they see, interact with, and experience the world is different. This is something they're born with rather than acquire. We also encourage you to look at the neurodiversity movement, which looks at some of the advantages that being neuroatypical can have. We may be covering some of the challenges in this session, but we also encourage you that there can be many advantages to seeing the world differently and much we can learn from the neurodiversity movement. Whilst we recognise there are a number of neurodevelopmental disorders, during this session we'll be focusing firstly on autism spectrum disorder, also known as ASD, and then attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, also known as ADHD. A neurodevelopmental disorder refers to a disorder that can impact a child's functioning in a number of areas, such as social communication, emotional expression and understanding, impulse control, memory, and learning. A child or adult with a neurodevelopmental disorder has a brain that's wired differently from what's termed as a neurotypical person, which means the way they see, interact with, and experience the world is different. This is something they're born with rather than acquire. We also encourage you to look at the neurodiversity movement, which looks at some of the advantages that being neuroatypical can have. We may be covering some of the challenges in this session, but we also encourage you that there can be many advantages to seeing the world differently and much we can learn from the neurodiversity movement. Autism is a lifelong developmental disability that affects how a person communicates with and relates to other people. It also affects how they make sense of the world around them. You may have heard different terms such as autism, Asperger's, and ASD. The official diagnosis given in Coventry, in line with the DSM, is autism spectrum disorder, or ASD. It's called a spectrum condition because while all people with autism share certain difficulties, their condition will affect them in different ways, and some children will need a lot more additional support than others in managing their day-to-day lives. In order to receive a diagnosis of ASD, your child's behaviour would be pervasive and difficulties would be observed in the areas of social communication and interaction, rigidity and sensory difficulties in more than one setting, such as at home and at school. Children and young people with social communication difficulties might struggle in some of the following ways. They might struggle to pick up social cues from your facial expressions or body language, and so misinterpret a social situation. They're likely to struggle with non-literal language, and so common idioms such as "let's put our heads together" or "pull your socks up" might be taken literally and the true meaning misunderstood until it's been explained. They might miss when someone's being sarcastic or not pick up on tone of voice, and so again misinterpret a conversation or social situation. They might struggle to process lots of verbal information, and so this is where you might want to use tools such as visual timetables or social stories. You might find that they have difficulty in turn-taking in conversations, or you may find they always bring a conversation back onto their own topic of interest. They may also struggle to identify their own emotions, and similarly, may not easily understand emotional vocabulary without some help. Rigidity can be a strong feature in ASD, and you might notice that your child has difficulty with flexibility in the following areas. Concept of danger. Your child might not understand the danger of talking to strangers and may readily offer up personal information when they're talking to someone they don't know, so you'll probably need to provide some extra support and training for them in this area, and we talk about this in a later session. You're likely to find that your child is rigid in the area of play. When they're younger, you might find that they line up their toys in a specific way. You may find that they don't tend to engage in imaginative play, or you may find that they experience more difficulty than their peers in sharing and taking turns. Dealing with change can be a big area of difficulty for children with ASD. They may struggle to adapt to change in normal routine, for example, having a supply teacher or a sudden change of plan. These type of situations may cause your child a lot of distress. Your child may need support and preparation to cope in new situations. You may find that using social stories or visual timetables can help you prepare your child. Your child may also find it difficult to anticipate or predict the consequences of their actions. You may have heard it described as theory of mind, which means they can find it hard to think that someone else may think differently from them. A child with a neurodevelopmental disorder may experience a range of sensory difficulties or sensitivities. Behaviours relating to sensory needs serve a purpose for your child. They're often a way of regulating the body. We all know the 5 main senses of taste, sight, smell, hearing, and touch, but it might surprise you to know that there are also other senses. The vestibular sense is related to balance, and the proprioceptive sense is related to body awareness. For more information on this, visit our RISE website and look for the sensory workshop where you can hear more detail on this subject. Sensory behaviours are sometimes to seek or avoid sensory stimulation. For example, you may find that your child can't cope with a feeling of seams on socks or certain fabrics. Remember, for them, it may create physical discomfort in a way that having clothes on that are full of pins would create discomfort for you. Or for example, the proprioceptive sense may be particularly heightened. You may find it an interesting exercise to stand behind your child and stretch your hands out towards them and see when they can feel you touching them. It may be that they can sense you before you physically touch them, or it may be that you need to apply pressure for them to feel your touch. Maybe your child hangs upside down, spins, or likes to bounce. Again, this is a way of regulating how they feel and is useful for them. For example, your child may find it very calming to do a wheelbarrow walk with you, where you hold their legs and they use their hands to walk. You may find it helpful to think of what's called a sensory diet that will help your child, such as a weighted blanket or bouncing on a trampoline. Remember, it may not be possible for them to just stop a sensory behaviour because of the regulating nature of the behaviour or the distress that it's causing. Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder, or ADHD, is a neurodevelopmental disorder that includes symptoms such as inattentiveness, hyperactivity, and impulsiveness, characterised by lots of energy, difficulties with organisation, concentration, and impulse control. There are 3 types: primarily inattentive, or ADD, which stands for Attention Deficit Disorder, or primarily hyperactive, or combined. Symptoms of ADHD tend to be noticed at an early age, usually before the age of 6, and across more than one setting. This means that for a child to be diagnosed with ADHD, symptoms of hyperactivity and or inattentiveness will usually have been seen at home and school. Children with ADHD may have lots of energy and problems concentrating. They might be forgetful and say things without thinking. Some children may engage in risky behaviours because they struggle to think through the consequences before going for it. The video ADHD is My Superpower is a child and adult talking about what it's like to live with ADHD. You might want to sit down together and talk about or draw what your superpowers are. Here are some of the other conditions that are commonly associated with having a neurodevelopmental disorder. Often children with neurodevelopmental disorders can experience anxiety, for example as a result of change to routine or because social interactions are difficult. A behaviour is a way of communicating a need. All behaviour serves a function. This means that it gets the communicated need met. Nearly all behaviours are normal and not problematic, and most usually only become problematic when they start to affect other people. As behaviours serve a function, if you want to try and change a behaviour, then try to understand what function it serves and then offer an alternative. Children may be socially disinhibited with adults or easily led or rejected by peers. We'll discuss this in more depth in the risk and vulnerability section during session 3. It's also common to hear of children diagnosed with a neurodevelopmental disorder having sleep difficulties. At the end of this session, you'll find the details for Cerebra, which is a sleep specialist service that can offer free advice and strategies. So now we've talked about what a neurodevelopmental disorder is, you may want your child to join you for the rest of the session. Here is an activity for you to do together at home. Take some time together to think about what autism and ADHD looks like for you in your family. Take some paper or create a document where you could copy and paste or draw images or descriptions about what ASD or ADHD looks like in your lives. We want you to think about the positives and advantages, as well as some of the challenges. Some examples might be needing a nice predictable routine, or losing track of time and being late for school, forgetting to do homework, needing nice quiet space, only liking specific foods. We'd suggest you pause this presentation and take 5 minutes to do this activity together now. After diagnosis, you may find that you need to talk about what it means to you on more than one occasion to understand it. Over time, as you get older, you may find that your understanding of your diagnosis changes. We know that a lot of families have found that books can be a helpful way to explore further what having ASD and or ADHD is like. We have some recommendations for you on this slide. You may have already seen some of these books, but there may be some new ones to you. Please take some time to have a look and see if there's anything you might think is useful for you or your family. It's important to note that at different times in your journey with your child, you might have different needs and therefore need to access different support services. The following slides contain some services that you might want to access. You may find it useful to watch some of these short clips that explain what autism is. The first video is of a puppet explaining autism. Please note, he talks very fast and is probably more suitable for younger children. The second video is a lovely narrated animation explaining what autism is. On the third link, please note that it shows sensory overload from a child's perspective, so you may not want to watch this with your child. The Power of Trying is by John O'Train and is about recognising achievements no matter what setbacks you encounter. This website offers resources and activities for building social skills and helping with behaviour regulation. Cerebra is a sleep service who offer help and advice on sleep issues, some of which include settling problems, difficulty sleeping alone, and early rising. If you haven't already used Dimensions, then please visit the Dimensions website, linked below. You'll be asked to answer a series of questions about your child, and then useful and relevant resources will be produced tailored for your child. If you visit our website, you'll also find useful resources that may answer any further questions you have. If you're looking for local and national organisations that might be helpful, then please view our How to Help presentation. On our website, you'll also find a recorded seminar, a Supporting Sensory Difficulties Parents Workshop by our service lead and OT, Gemma Cartwright. You will also find a recorded seminar called Emotional Regulation Support by one of our psychologists. You'll also find a Communication Skills for Children with Autism presentation. You'll find the link to our website in the resources section below this video. Thank you for listening to this presentation. We hope you found it useful.